that have been in the news so much over the last week or so, I know he was a bit cheeky, but these bots from Microsoft have been a bit cheeky.
They're one level on them.
How long before you don't need to have a guy in a mocap suit and these creations that you're augmenting can actually interact with you based on computer learning?
I think there's levels of it that are happening already now. I think one of the things that we found when we're basically building environments for people to interact with 3D is that the content is all important.
Yeah.
Now 3D is one level, but also the actual interaction you have and the conversation that you have is incredibly powerful. So AI is not at that level where you can converse properly. You may converse, but there's actually no real character behind it that you identify with. And that, again, going back to the uncanny valley, you're running into these very odd environments.
Sure, let's just, before we move on, let's pick up on that point. Who's heard of the uncanny valley here? No, it's not a place that you visit in the United States. You were saying earlier on, it's this phenomenon where you see computer animated characters that are almost human-like, but not quite. And we have a physical reaction to them.
Yeah, we're actually repulsed by them when we see it. There's a certain crossing point, and there are kind of graphs that we can discuss. But it's the idea of when you hit a certain point of photorealism with a humanoid, you suddenly don't like it anymore, and you're physically repulsed by it, and then you stop wanting to be near it. Now, from the systems that we build, that's a very, very dangerous area for us to be in because we're creating engagement.
Yeah,
so it's the exact opposite of where we want to be.
Which is why you see caricatures, which is why you embody aliens and things like that.
Exactly. So Sean was a great example of how we looked at, what is something that you're not going to meet? Well, there's a character you're never going to meet, but a character that you would love to meet and will identify with.
Fantastic. Right, we've had a look at a couple of experiences here, which, you kind of need a camera, a big screen, an actor dressed up in a motion capture suit. I would love to have that in my living room, but that's not really going to happen. With our next one, the mobile AR, this is the sort of stuff that anybody can do, whether they're at home, whether they're out on a walk with a family, or in the classroom, right?
Absolutely.
Let's take a look.
Sure.
Okay, so over here, we've got iPad. I'll hold the iPad for you. Yep, that's on the screen now. And we have a copy of
the Guinness World Records.
Guinness Book of World Records. Okay, I'll let you fire this
Yeah,
up.
I've got it.
Cool.
So this is where we actually began. We began developing the concept of AR on mobile. So what we've got here is a conventional iPad. iPad has an application downloaded from the App Store. This works on Android and iOS. And what we've done is we've developed a system that allows the iPad to track the book in real time and then render 3D content on top of it. So what we're seeing here is a rendering of the world's smallest man to scale, triggered through, it's effectively a digital pop-up.
Sure, so the camera on your iPad, that could be an Android, that could be a smartphone equally.
Absolutely.
But it's spotting that this book, it knows that there's something about this book, it's a marker, a hotspot, whatever you want to call it, and then it's overlaying this content on top. And the clever thing is that how you move around it adjusts accordingly.
So what you've got, because it's tracking the page and it's measuring probably about 100 points on the page, it allows us to actually walk around and view it in 3D. So it knows my position relative to the book's position and then renders the 3D content accordingly. So I can't go around there because of the monitor, but hopefully my hand's steady enough to illustrate the point.
Now I first started seeing this technology probably about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a little bit rubbish, I'm not going to lie, back then.
Yeah.
This is kind of where we're at now in terms of state-of-the-artness, how solid the experience is.
Yeah, I think the tracking, i.e. what the camera can look at and recognise and then lock to, improves almost on a sort of 3-month basis.
Right.
So we've, back in 2009, we went through a period where we had demos that would barely track. If we were under a particular light, it would not work because the contrast would destroy the track.
But then the cameras in these devices have got so much better as well, haven't they?
Absolutely, but you get into very odd situations where the autofocus will cause you issues.
Oh yeah,
because it's continually reassessed.
Of course it is. I guess one of the challenges level with me here is that who knows what QR codes are? Everyone knows what QR codes are. There's that kind of like 3D barcodes. You know that when you see one of those, you can scan it, okay? You know what to do with it. It's very, very visual what it is. Unless you knew that there was an app on your device that accompanies this, there's nothing obvious with this Guinness Book of Records that you would know that there's some augmented content to go with that. Is that a bit of a challenge for you?
It is. What we've done over the years is we've actually had to build campaigns around the actual application itself to allow, to evangelize and allow people to understand how it works.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the kind of great ironies of the AR industry at the moment, that you spend all of your time developing something that doesn't require a specific marker, and then because it doesn't have a specific marker, no one knows where the content's appearing from.
Speaking of content in unexpected places, you've got some stuff going on the Jurassic Coast, haven't you?
Yeah, we've had a system there that's actually been installed for nearly 2 years, and it's the idea, instead of actually triggering content on the book itself, it's the idea of you going along a tourist trail on the south coast of the Isle of Wight and actually triggering from markers and then seeing the dinosaurs actually roam around the physical landscape. Yeah. Which is a really kind of terrifying and exciting project to develop. But it's an amazing concept to actually see the content in properly in a real world environment.
So before long, we'll all be walking around, maybe with our tablets going, oh yeah, hello, nice. Or maybe in our glasses, but we'll come to that in a moment. Now, talking about QR codes, this marker does look a little bit like a QR code in some funny way. Let's see what you've got here.
Yeah. So what we've got here is a concept that we're developing for the education industry. And it's the idea of me being able to trigger artifacts inside a classroom environment and then be able to teach with them. So as you'll probably see as a step on from what we've seen with Guinness, I can now actually manipulate the content in real time and trigger it. So I can also move it left to right here as well. So what we're starting to do is build out larger and larger 3D environments and allow children to actually be taught using the artifacts they probably never even visit.
Yeah, and so many schools are embracing iPads, tablets, smart devices. Yeah, many kids have got this stuff anyway, so I can see that this is a fun way. I love this stuff. Yeah. It meant to change from opening a textbook. I can understand the value of this in a classroom. Maybe not every day, but certainly once a week, twice a week, or whatever.
Yeah, I think the idea of kind of gamifying the experience and allowing. We were talking yesterday. I was talking to a friend of mine. We were talking about allowing people to actually explore the idea of evolution as a group. So they can actually play a game that's actually triggering characters, etc., in front of them, and make decisions based on what will happen next.
Okay. Listen, that's cool stuff. I like the interactivity there. I want to talk to you about the future, and unfortunately, we can't demo the future all that easily on the stage. But at the moment, we're kind of walking around with our phones or with our tablets in order to connect up this augmented content. But actually 4 years ago now, Google came out with something called Google Glass. Who's tried on Google Glass? A few of you, not many. And that was probably one of the problems. We've got video actually for those of you who haven't tried on Google Glass. You can take a look at that please, here we go. Tell me what Google Glass was for the uninitiated.
So Google Glass was effectively a pair of glasses with a tiny, what was effectively called a projection system. It was overlaying digital content onto your view. So very much an AR glass.
Okay. Now, it didn't work. I remember when Google Glass came out, they had a video called One Day. It was our first, there were no real spoilers about this. It practically broke the internet the day that this came out. We all got so excited about it. Thought, yeah, this really is the future. Yeah. And then precisely nothing really happened with it, and they ditched the project 2 or 3 years later. Why was that?
I think I think Google were the first to admit that they got it wrong because it was effectively an inward-facing glass. It was actually overlaying things like the idea that you had 100 unread emails, and most people have got a very, very quick way of doing that. They know they have unread emails, they have a million tasks.
Yeah.
So what they realised was that no one really wanted to be reminded of kind of slightly mundane tasks as they're walking down the street.
Okay. So Google went and ditched the Glass project. For now, they are working on whatever the next iteration of that will be. But that hasn't stopped other brands, other companies from coming up with glass-type solutions. Let's take a look at Magic Leap. Who's heard of Magic Leap? No. Brilliant. Not many people have. You will remember them when you see this video. This was another video they popped up with last year. They've been getting a lot of money from big players, haven't they?
They have. They've already taken, I think, $750 million, ironically, from Google, to carry on building. There's no hardware devices have been seen by anyone outside of the business.
Now, something that this does, better than, we've seen elsewhere is that it's aware of the environment. You know, we saw a hole appearing in the ceiling there. So this computer on your face, it knows where the walls are, it knows where the ceilings are. That's the next level, right?
And that's the exact opposite to what glass was. This is an outward-looking device. So it's actually looking at the environment it sees, mapping it in real time, and then placing content accordingly. Now, I think we can all agree that this is a slightly more engaging experience than the glass one.
I wish my day in the office was like this. A big tank is about to come through the wall there. That looks like a lot of fun, but no one here had heard of them. It's kind of a niche, and not very many people have tried it on. You know, it's very, very secret, very close to
I think they call it stealth mode, don't they? They're literally talking to no one, showing nothing to, other than, I think there's about 20, 30 people in the business itself who are actually using the prototype.
And they've not let journalists get hands-on with this. No. It's a big game of trust at the moment.
And some fantastic marketing videos. It's actually, I think.
We're talking about it here, aren't we? And finally, speaking of fantastic marketing videos, but technology that you can get your hands on, and you will be getting your hands on next month. Let's have a look at Microsoft HoloLens, please.
What if we could go beyond the screen?
Here we go. Now, what's different about this?
Digital world.
This is different in the sense that this device is going to be available probably within 12 months. We're going to developer equipment that's already going to be in the office within 1 month. So it's the same principle. It's outward looking, it's measuring the environment, it's analysing the environment, it's placing 3D content accordingly.
We see that in the next shot actually. You can see the room here being mapped, all of the surfaces being mapped.
So the camera is constantly analysing all of the furniture it sees and the wall it sees, and then placing the content onto that furniture in real time. So you've got a fantastic Minecraft example there.
Let's take it closer.
So what it can effectively do is probably render almost limitless amounts of content. And the TV example is interesting. I think the 3D is more interesting.
Yeah. Now, one of the interesting things with this with a lot of these technologies, virtual reality, augmented reality, we are mimicking our senses a bit. You know, sight is certainly a big sense that we're mimicking. Audio as well. I mean, some of the spatial positioning when you've got one of these headsets on, so you know you can hear stuff all around you. Smell, taste, not so bothered about those yet. Touch. Yeah. Touch is a difficult thing. As we saw there, one of the user interface things with HoloLens is that little pinch. Yeah. But there's still, you know, it's not as though you're touching something. It's not as though you're holding a sword or holding a ray gun or, you know, painting or something like that. You're still grasping thin air.
I mean, they're running into really very interesting issues because obviously your hands are now free at that point with something like HoloLens. So you're able to control content. It's able to recognise, you know, 5 fingers in the air, for example, or 2 hands in the air, but you're not really receiving any feedback in terms of your movements, other than actually the change in the content, which is something that we're not really used to because we require feedback from tactile feedback.
There are some technologies, there are some glove-type technologies where, you know, you move at kind of a very advanced stage of the mocap stuff, you know, where you've got cameras watching you. You can kind of do that, but the gloves give you a little bit of haptic feedback. Yeah. You know, that little sort of vibration that gives you the sensation of touching things. But also these air pulse technologies as well. They're very exciting.
It's amazing. Yeah, there's some videos floating around the internet at the moment, which is the idea that it's measuring the movement of your hand and actually pinging kind of small pockets of air to your finger. So you're actually receiving feedback, but there's actually no physical contact with anything other than air moving incredibly quickly through a space.
I've tried one.
Have you actually tried one?
See, I've never tried it. It's at the University of Bristol. They've got this little array, and they've got these devices that pump up the air. It's like you're stroking or touching something, but it's in thin air. Yeah. That's the sort of stuff. But again, it requires you to kind of be above a bit of tech in order to feel nothing.
Yeah. I think at the moment, I think certainly with things like wearables and overlaying digital content onto wearables, there is going to be no immediate change in how you're going to have to see a response to feel it. There is going to be nothing else. I mean, the guys, the Bristol guys just here with the soft robotic stand.
Yes.
The idea of kind of gloves providing feedback to you. If you get a chance, they're just here on the right hand side, and they're like very humble looking little stand there. But what they're doing is an incredible thing.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this year is the year that virtual reality goes real. Augmented reality may not be far behind, you know, in its current forms. This stuff's arriving now, but maybe it will have much longer much longer tail to it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that ultimately, I think VR is going to take a lot of kind of press coverage this year, and rightly so, because a lot of the content players will already be there.
Yeah.
I think AR-wise, I think we're looking at the next 3 to 5 in terms of it having kind of widespread adoption, but it will probably transfer across a lot more